Hey guys, this is Arthur with Stardust Automotive again. Here we are working on a LS9. Our one video we went through was discussing about the DoD Elite using the set screws. And now what I want to talk to you about is before you put your crankshaft in here, obviously you want to have everything clean. But I've had some people ask me, without having to take it to a machine shop, how to clean up the main journals on the crankshaft. 'Cause sometimes they get little burrs, and you see there's just a little bit of a not very deep grooves, but there's still just a little light pushing on them. But machine shops will charge you a lot of money to go ahead and polish your crank and all that. As long as it mics out and it's okay, and there's nothing that's very, very deep lacerations or deep cuts into your crank. Let me show you what you want to get. Here, you want to get a gray Scotch-Brite pad, and you want to cut about an inch for each one of them, or just the width of the bearing piece, okay? And you're going to put it in all 5 journals. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And you see how they kind of just sit in there? And then you sit your crankshaft on top, okay? Now what you'll do next is you will get a number 24, there you go, socket, deep socket, wherever you want to use. Grab your stock OE bolt, shove that bad boy in there. Also never reuse these things. I'm only using it just to turn the crank. These get thrown away because they're aluminum and they're stretched bolts, so you never want to reuse them. Anyway, so you can see they're all just kind of sitting there sandwiched. Grab a breaker bar or a speed ratchet. I'm using a torque wrench. And that's all you do. Spin it around in a circle. Okay? And then what will happen is this will actually polish it and make it look really nicely. If there's any burrs or any scuffs or anything like that on there, now look at that. Look how beautiful that is. That only took just a couple of seconds to do. And you saw before how there were little grooves in it. Now look at that. Nothing. Beautiful and perfect. Obviously, you still want to go ahead and use some a micrometer or one of those mic gauges. I use a non-mic on these personally, but that's one of these here. Let me show you. Let me throw this down. Okay. These are gauges I use. The reason why I like this is because it will be able to tell you, your depth, how far out of round it is. Because obviously, if you push the little top there, it moves the dial. I like dial gauges. You can measure the crank a lot better using that and a micrometer. There we go. There we go. Where'd my micrometer go? There it is. There you go. And you can see we got the heads and all that done. Beautiful. Something easy peasy like this, Set it to 0, and then you're going to measure the diameter of your crank journal. Okay, so in a situation like this, you've got .097. And obviously you can kind of turn that into a couple different places. You can see 2.147, and you can see the variance. Actually, I'm sorry, I messed up. Hold on here. Try to do this where you can actually see it. Hold on. Sorry about these, my camera fellas. There we go. Okay. You want to check this at a couple different locations, okay? A couple different spots. So right there, you see we're at 2.106. And obviously there's a little bit of fluctuation depending if you have it angled this way, angled this way. But this is just to kind of give you an idea. So I usually do best out of 3, and here we are again at 2.096. So I'm pretty comfortable that it's where it's centered up. It's 2.097. Now you want to do the same thing. Move this over a little bit. Check the top side here. There you go. Got it nice and straight, and I'm only 300,000ths of an inch off, so that's still within spec. And then next thing I'll do is check with the dial, leave it up here, put it in the bearing. But that's how you check those. Let me put that back in there. Always put your tools away, fellas. But anyway, so that's how you end up cleaning these. I end up using Permatex Ultra Slick engine assembly lube. I actually prefer this over the conventional style. Where's that? I have, there it is. CRC's got some really good assembly lube as well. It's extreme pressure assembly lube, and it's got moly graphite in it. This is also really, really, really good stuff too. But for me, I actually prefer the Permatex, just because it's got different chemicals in it, and I find that it makes the aluminum block ones for the LS's just that much easier to do. And if it sits for a while, that stuff doesn't leak out. It bonds to the metal, so it's really, really good stuff. I recommend it. But anyway, so if you give me a second here, let me go ahead and remove the crankshaft here. I'm gonna sit you guys down here for 1 second here. Well, let me do this. There we go. Let's see if I can focus here. Hey, look at that. We got focus now. All right. So. Now you can see that some of these still stay on. Pull them off. You can reuse them again down the line. Now let me show you something here. All right. You never, ever, ever want to do that with your bearings in. I forgot to tell you that to begin with. Because if not, you could screw your new bearings up. You do it with the bearings out, or just the raw casing. Once they sit in here from the pressure, they don't slide out or anything. But you can see here on the crank, come on, focus. There we go. Look how beautiful and clean that is. And that's just by going over a couple ones. Now, you don't want to sit there and do this a million times on it. Let me see if I can get here. Come on. And of course, it's not going to focus here. Oh, there we go. Focus. There you go. See how shiny that is now? That's really good stuff. Anyway, so you don't want to sit in there and just, you know, grind. You know, 15, 20 turns, that's all you need, and it'll be nice and shiny and smooth. And it's not going to take enough of the metal out that it's going to change your specs for your bearings. This is an uncut crankshaft. I had it down at the machine shop. They mic'd it. I'm going to double check the work anyway, just to make sure, but we don't need undersized bearings. This is still within spec you're using for OEM standard size bearings. The other thing I want to discuss about with this crank, besides you always replace these crank bolts, a lot of times these guys will replace these crank gears, or they'll get kits and spend the extra, you know, 30, 40 bucks on these. Guys, let me tell you the truth. These gears do not wear out. I've pulled these things out of, you know, LS engines that's had 200,000 and 300,000 miles, and I've reused them, no problem. And the vehicles are still driving today that I know of. Ones we use for our own personal vehicles, you know, I don't replace them. They don't wear out. I know a lot of vendors and stuff like that. I'm not going to mention names, but they like to do scare tactics where they say, oh, you got to replace the chain and you got to replace your crank sprocket. The only real thing you got to change on occasion, let me go over here, is your timing chain. This thing's got 160,000 miles on it, and measured the chain, and it's the same size as stock as a brand new one, so we can reuse this one. You always want to check, you know, but you know, they're 40-50 bucks for OEM GM, so it might be worth the investment while you have it out. Just change it out. But the gears on them, they really don't wear out, despite popular opinion. I rebuilt a lot of these things, so you know, I wouldn't worry about it. You know what I mean? Now, if working with stuff like this where we've got a Subaru engine, obviously you don't do that with, because these things, they got belts. You know, we got a what is that, Chrysler engine here. They got chains, they stretch. Never do that. Same thing with some of those other ones over there. We got a VG30DE. Then we got a Ford Mustang block back there. It's got a chain. That one's stretched. Actually, we got to rebuild that one because that's got a stretched chain in it. But it's aged. The customer's got us doing that. We got a VG30DE down here. They got belts, so don't have to worry about this. But anyway, with the LS's, you know, you can reuse the chains. They're not going to kill anything. But I do recommend, if you do change them, go to an LS2 chain. The LS2 chains are much thicker. They're heavier duty. So if you end up adding in a performance camshaft, like with this one, we've gone with a stage 2. It's a 212, 218 with a 0.600 inch lift on a 112 lobe separation angle. You know, it's going to put down another, realistically, you know, 40-50 extra horsepower just using that. You know, some guys will do higher compression pistons and build it up a little bit more. At that point, yeah, I would recommend moving out chain to a LS2 and replacing it. But you know, if you're just doing a stock build, you can reuse it and it's perfectly fine. I've done it a million times and we've never had an issue with any of them breaking or snapping or stretching. I'm sure it does happen, but for stock engines, at a stock, you know, Yukons or Suburbans or the Silverados, I've never seen them stretch enough where you can't reuse them. What I would recommend doing is getting rid of this horrible stock chain guide. These things are garbage. Spend the 18 bucks, get the dampeners. The dampener sits right in here. Some of them have the holes that are drilled out, some of them do not. This particular block does have it, so all we got to do is screw it in. But it's a piece of, I guess, plastic, if you will, for a better lack of terminology. But it just goes in between and holds the chain out more. It's a much better design. But anyway, so that's it as far as, you know, cleaning the crank and polishing the crank. You don't need to take them down to the machine shop. Again, if you don't have deep grooves, if you take your fingernail and scrape across it and it catches on it, you're going to have it machined, you know, maybe 10 under, you know, and then go from there. If you can't catch anything on your nail, just do what I did, polish it up. The rod journals, okay, these are going to be a little bit different. What I usually do is the same thing. You take some Scotch-Brite. Obviously you want to cut it to length. These I use these specifically for the mains. I got another set over there for the rods, but what I do is I take it and I wrap it all the way around, and then I use one of our barn ties and I wrap it around, and then at the end of it I wrap string over and over and over and over again. And what I'll do is I'll pull that string and it will spin it on this journal about, again, 15 to 20 times, and this thing will come out perfect. It takes off very, very minimal, if it takes off anything, but I've never had one where, if it's a good crank and I've done that, where we've had to get undersized bearings or it set it off. So it takes off very, very minimal. But again, you want to use the gray Scotch-Brite, not the green, and none of the other ones. You want to use gray. So that's it, guys. Go ahead, smash that like button, hit that subscribe, share this. This is Stardust Automotive. Our phone number is 410-596-8985 out here in Jacksonville, North Carolina. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. We're going to go ahead and make some more. God bless you guys and have a wonderful day.